Governor George Allen from the Commonwealth of Virginia. Topic, the Electoral College. Something a lot of people don't understand. Off camera, you and I discussed how it never becomes an issue unless there's a difference between the popular vote and the outcome of the Electoral College. And then people wonder a whole lot about it. But to start us out, the Constitution, and for everyone to understand, the Constitution is the Electoral College is in the Constitution. It's not something new. That is correct, right? It's been there all along. All along.
It's one of the original compromises. There's a lot of compromises that were put into our Constitution.
That was one of them.
That was one of them.
That was one.
And the debate was whether to have popular election of president or to have the Congress, members of Congress, elect the president, which is kind of a parliamentary system that whoever's in the majority in the legislative branch has the prime minister or president. And what they came up with this compromise, which is that each state would have electoral votes. It was a compromise between the big states and the smaller states, and so it's based upon the electoral vote of each state. And that after all, it's the states that form the federal government. We are the United States of America. We're not America. We're the United States of America. And so but the smaller states do get 2 members in the Senate, whether you're a little state like Rhode Island or you're a big state like New York. And I'm talking about in the original, or Virginia, which is obviously a very big state. And so that was part of the compromise of it. And so obviously the country has grown from 13 states to 50, plus the District of Columbia, and that was a separate constitutional amendment to allow 3 electoral votes for the district. So it's, I think, a good balance, and it's one that I know gets people criticizing it from time to time. But to me, if you did not have the Electoral College, what you'd have is campaigns and elections being decided by the people who live in big metropolitan city areas. They'd completely ignore places like Iowa. They'd be caring about New York City and Philadelphia and say that anyway, for Washington, Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York, Boston area. And they'd care about Los Angeles and the Bay Area and Seattle and Chicago. And in Texas, it'd be the Dallas, Fort Worth area, and Houston, and so forth. And they would ignore rural areas. And it's not just ignoring the people, it's ignoring agriculture, for example, and people who raise livestock or crops that feed our country, or people who mine or provide us the timber, as well as those who are involved in finance in the big cities or in technology in the Silicon Valley and so forth. So to me, it's a good balance. Now, a solution, and this is a great part of the genius of our Constitution, is that if you wanted to have the electoral vote being reflective of the popular vote in a state can change the way they allocate their electoral votes. Electoral votes are not required to be winner take all. And 2 states, Maine and Nebraska, actually split their votes, or can split their votes, where they have several congressional districts. And so if candidate A wins the popular vote, but candidate B won a congressional district, candidate B could get one electoral vote for winning that congressional district. And that's happened in Maine. There's a very rural congressional district that's generally all woods, and obviously there's enough people in it. And then Omaha, part of Nebraska, has their own congressional district. And from time to time, those areas, Omaha will vote differently than the rest of Nebraska, or that rural, mostly timber area of Maine will vote different than Portland and Augusta, and the more populated coastal parts of Maine. So there's a way
and so, Governor, to clarify for our viewers on this, you're saying rather than at large, if you will, or statewide, allocate well, maybe some for the whole state and some for each congressional district. Is that what you're?
Well, see, because the electoral
proposing?
here's how you figure out the electoral vote of every state. It's generally population based. It's the number of senators and the number of members of the House of Representatives you have. Now, you have some states like Wyoming, where
there's 2 senators and 1 representative. Yes.
Right. So it's 3. Then you have states that are bigger, and you have the 2 senators out of Texas, plus however many members of the House of Representatives from it. So again, the way that Nebraska and Maine do it is whoever wins overall the state, that person gets those 2 senator votes, and then they also allocate them, and they have more than 1 member of the House of Representatives. They also allocate them by congressional district, and so states could do that if they so desired. There are folks who are saying whoever wins the popular vote ought to be president, and that's how they're going to allocate their votes in their state. So their state could vote for a certain candidate and win, but that candidate doesn't win the overall popular vote in the country, and they're talking about allocating their electoral votes to whoever won the most votes in the national election. To me, that's such an abdication of the views of your citizens. But if states want to do something like that, they have the right to do so. I just don't see most people in a state saying, wait a second, I voted for Smith, but Jones got the most votes in these other states, and so we're going to allocate my votes for Jones. It doesn't make sense to me. But I don't think it's a good idea. Others do. I'm just putting that out for people's education.
Only one in a list. If I can interject on this point, and this is covering the entire country, the alliterative phrase that people have talked about of the unfaithful electors, faithless fulfillments or whatever, but there are very few requirements that demand an elector vote for who was the winner in the state or who was the winner in the country. So in broad theory, when we vote on election day, we are voting for electors.
Right.
And people should understand, we are not voting for, strictly speaking, the presidential candidate. We're voting for his or her slate of electors.
Right.
Okay. But how many states require the electors to be faithful and support the candidate for whom they're on the ballot? Because in broad theory, you have 538 electors going out and doing their own thing. And I believe that would be constitutional, I guess.
Yeah, you're guessing correct. And Sam, that's a very nice broad theory. I guarantee you. And then there have been these electors throughout.
It's rare. I know that. It's rare, but it does happen.
It does happen. And not a single time any of these faithless electors change the outcome of the election. The reality is to be an elector, to be on that slate of electors for either party or any party, folks look these people over pretty closely. And they're not going to be, because it's a great honor to be selected as being one of the electors of your state. And so the folks who get to be electors for Democrats or for Republicans or for some independent party are folks that are, it's probably 99.99% have, and granted is, that 1/10 of 1/100th, that has flaked off. But
it's always somebody. It's always somebody.
Well, it's some, but it hasn't had an effect. And those ones, by the way, those few that flaked off, who were faithless and did not keep their promises that, if so and so wins the election, I'm going to be one of the electors casting one of our state's electoral votes for that candidate. That all the few times that happens just gets each party to say, we need to be darn sure that if our candidate wins, we're not going to get somebody going off on some tangent. So
So
it's
it
all,
reinforces your point. Yes, it
yeah. So
reinforces.
your theories are all correct. As a practical matter, uh, it doesn't happen. The other thing here's the other practicality. If you and there are a lot of people, especially, and I find them mostly people who living in the coasts in big city areas who think there ought to be a popular vote. And I can understand the logic of it all. Here's the reality. To amend the Constitution takes 3/4 of the states. There's no way they're going to get 3/4 of the states, especially the smaller states, to give up the power they currently have to say, oh yeah, we're going to let New York City and Los Angeles and Chicago and Philadelphia and Detroit and Dallas, Fort Worth, and so forth decide who our president is. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to change. And you just think of all the generally smaller states, a place where they grow a lot of crops, a lot of livestock, have a lot of trees, and so forth. They'll never get 3/4 of the. I don't even think you get half the states to agree to such an amendment.
You actually read my mind again on it. Would it even get as far as the first step of getting 2/3 of each house of Congress? It
No,
would have to do that before it could even get to the states.
yeah,
So
they might could pull it off in the House of Representatives. They even there, I don't think they'd get it, but they definitely would not get it out of the Senate. The states here. I got to look at this list here. Let's see. A state like, let's see, Texas, Florida, the big states would, but I don't see Indiana pulling, or South Carolina or Nevada or Utah. Virginia shouldn't do it. Colorado, Idaho, South Dakota, any of the plain states.
yeah,
None of them.
even those states with senators opposing
Yeah,
of
no.
opposing parties wouldn't
I mean,
support it.
the only states that would be for it would be the states with big municipal, big city areas. Yeah, a place like New York,
Mhm.
and maybe New Jersey, possibly Pennsylvania, Illinois, California. Uh, but you're not going to get any of the plain states, none of the Mountain West states. Alaska and Hawaii wouldn't vote for it. I don't think Oregon would even vote for it. So it's just not going to get anywhere. It's a nice. It's good for people to look at it. Everything should be reviewed, but realize that this is a balance. So much of our Constitution are compromises, and the difference between the House and the Senate and so forth. And it's one that can be amended from time to time to make this a more perfect union. And amendments, generally speaking, have all, in fact, every amendment other than prohibition, which was quickly repealed a few years later, have I think made this a better country with more opportunities for women, for blacks, for equal opportunities for all. And but this is one that's not gonna change. That it just doesn't make sense. Why would anyone give up if you're one of those states?
It's not going to change, Governor, but certainly this repartee of ours back and forth, I hope helps people understand a bit more about the mechanics of the college. Because as we said many times, when it's a blowout election, Reagan in both 80 and 84, for example, that you and I remember, where he won, 44 states in one and 49 in the other. No one ever cared about, there was no coverage of the Electoral College meeting at all. But then when you have a close one like Bush Gore in 2000, everyone lasers in on it as if, where did this come from?
Well,
And
that
sort
also
of,
in the 2016 election, for that
as
matter,
well,
Clinton,
yes.
Clinton and Trump. The other thing with electoral college versus a plurality vote, a popular vote, generally speaking, we have two parties, but every now and then there's third and fourth and fifth parties where someone could get elected without a majority of the vote. And in electoral college, you do need to get a majority of the electoral votes. And we've had some ties where it's gone to the House of Representatives to make a decision on it. But then Abraham Lincoln got elected with about 40% of the vote. There were four
parties in 1860,
candidates
yes.
in 1860, but he did get a majority of the Electoral College, which gives some sense of authenticity that you at least got a majority of the Electoral College.
Got a majority somewhere. Somewhere you found a majority, yes. In 1996, I believe it was, no, 92, Bill Clinton got, I believe 43%.
Yeah, it was very low because
George
Ross Perot was running.
Right. Although he got no electoral votes, but he pulled down that popular vote. But then the affirmation said, well, but Clinton got a substantial margin into the Electoral College. So that gave, as you said, legitimacy and did that. Well, two things. It's an interesting topic, but the status quo is not going to change. Those are the two things we can take out of this one.
Well, yeah. The people in the states are going to look out for their best interest,
sure.
And for the smaller states, they're still going to have a seat at the table, and they'll get more attention. The reality is the places that get the most attention in presidential years are these battleground states, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Now they'll go to New York and California to raise money, and everyone knows which way those states are generally going to vote, but it's going to be the battleground states. But even within those states, there's certain areas that are the battleground counties, where are the ones where the swing voters are. Iowa, by the way, this is a state with the most swing counties and congressional districts through the years, and that's why everyone pays a lot of attention to Iowa, and why we have ethanol subsidies as high as they are as well.
Well, as I said, it's a unique topic, but the founding fathers probably got it right that everyone was going to be looked out for fairly, one way or the other. Right. And of course, they would not have envisioned 50 states. I don't imagine they did. But,
I don't know.
Well, who knows? But
Jefferson made the Louisiana Purchase, so he knew we were going to grow. And
it was going to happen somewhere along the way. But
the manifest destiny.
Yes, sir. But it's certainly held up and done that. We've covered a lot of history and civics in this segment out of it. It's always a great pleasure, Governor Allen. Thanks so much.
Thank you.